Many parents are concerned about their kids spending too much time on screens. And for me, as a coding teacher, that's also a big problem. Even though having computer skills and especially knowing how to code will set up your child for success, there are some negative side effects to too much screen time. So while we definitely want kids to be tech savvy and smart and learn lots of things, we also want to make sure that our kids experience the real world and find out what it has to offer. So that's why in this video I'll tell you 7 screen-free activities that your kids can do, and I'll tell you why I believe that these activities will help your child's cognitive development and can even make them better at coding no matter what age they are. It's challenging to manage children's demand for technology and stimulating activities like video games. Some parents feel guilty for giving in and just letting their child do whatever they want on the computer. If you're looking to cut out your child's screen time, it's important to put alternatives in place, or else the void you create will only become boring and soon be filled up again with more screen time. Rather than, okay, that's it, no more screens, or limits like 30 minutes of screen time per day, I think it's better to start with something like 30 minutes of screen-free activities per day and then work your way up. And I think that consistency is the key here. And with the 7 activities I'm showing you in this video, you'll have 1 activity for every day of the week. This way you know your kids are learning and developing skills in both domains, the real world and computers. And let's face it, screens and computers are an integral part of modern human life, and the only way to avoid them is to cut yourself off from most of civilization. And maybe we can even enable kids to contribute to this tech-enabled society by teaching them how to code and all the skills related to it. So before we dive in with our 7 activities, let me reiterate that coding is not just a singular skill, but it's compounded and made up of many skills. If we dissect exactly what coding is and what it means and what you have to be good at to be a good coder, then we come up with a list of things, and from that list we can then derive activities that kids can do that will strengthen that skill or ability without needing to sit in front of a computer screen. So the main components that make up coding are reading and writing, numbers and math, geometry and visual thinking, pattern recognition and attention to detail, logic and causality, engineering, problem solving, creativity, organizing, structuring and categorizing, and we also need some fine motor skills to control the computer efficiently. Let's see how many fun activities we can come up with that really strengthen these skills. Of course, depending on your child's age and where they're at in their development, some of these skills might already be more or less established for them, so some of the activities I mentioned might be more or less adequate. Many of these I would definitely recommend for kids that are still too young for actual coding, but there's a few good ones in here for older children too. Let's start at reading and writing. Some parents are overly enthusiastic about getting their kids into coding, but I want to stress that that's of no use if the kids are not very good yet at reading and writing. So have kids that are still young play with these magnet letters. That's how I actually learned to read at a young age. It's great because besides making kids better at reading and writing, it allows them to see how they can use a limited set of components to build something more complex and impressive. Another one to improve that skill is to play board games and card games, especially those that heavily rely on letters and numbers, or the ones where you have to organize the cards in some manner in order to win the game. As part of learning to code, I teach my students how to make websites and video games. Both relies a lot on geometry. For example, measuring distances, usually in pixels. So calibrating your feeling for numbers that you make correct ballpark guesses is pretty useful, especially for web design and video game development. In order to prepare your child for this geometry type of thinking, you can set them up with a ruler or measuring tape and tell them to measure everything in the house. How big is the fridge? How wide are the doors? Then tell them to write it all down for you and see if they find any connections. For example, are all the doorways actually the same width? Are all the chairs and tables a similar height? Also, working with angles trains a similar capacity in the brain. Give them an angle measuring tool like this one and tell them to find all the 60, 90 and 45 degrees angles in the house. To really increase your kids' commitment to this, make it sound like you really need their help with an important project around the house. Ask as if you really need to know those numbers. Then the activity feels important and like it actually has a purpose. Which, it really does have a purpose. Of course, if you actually have, for example, a home improvement project going on, then you can get your kids involved too. Doing a hands-on activity like this will strengthen your kids' ability to use numbers, and it'll improve their overall pattern recognition. Okay, here's a whole category of super fun and exciting activities: dominoes, marble tracks, and chain reactions. Some of what happens here is as close as you can get to simulating computer code in the real world. This whole cause and effect step-by-step chain is very similar to actual coding. Challenge your child to build the best and biggest chain reaction they can build. You will have to sacrifice the tidiness of your house for this one, but you can always ask your child to record it when they're done. Maybe their video goes viral. Talk about building things in untidy houses. Legos! Actually, this makes me wish this were a sponsored video. Hey Lego, if you want to send me some merchandise, I'd be more than happy to demonstrate and promote it. There's currently no Legos in my house. Really though, Lego offers an amazing way for your child to be creative, engineer things, and problem solve. Especially the Lego Technics and Robotics categories are great for older kids, even teenagers. Other ways in how playing with Legos is actually like coding is that you have to follow the instructions step by step if you're building something, and if you don't, you'll have a problem. Also, the frustration of forever not being able to find that one piece is quite similar to debugging and trying to find a missing semicolon in your code. It really prepares you for real life. Of course, there are many toy companies that offer alternatives to Legos. Some focus more on the mechanics, others have unique features like magnets. Something else that you might have to buy as a separate product but that has super high educational value are circuit builder kits. Piecing together different parallel or serial connections with light bulbs, buzzers, or motors is a very unique challenge, but one that's quite similar to coding. And it's definitely applicable to robotics as well. Generally speaking, there's a big selection of products out there these days, all geared towards robotics, coding, science, and engineering. And while they're great products, the challenge is often to actually get the kids to do them and make the activity in itself fun. There's little use in buying a toy that gets tried once but then never looked at again. So that's a bit of a downside of many of these great products. Video games are just very hard to beat in terms of fun, novelty, and instant reward. But that doesn't mean we can't try, right? Alright, this next one might sound surprising when taken out of context, but I really think that origami can make your kids better at coding. Mainly because it requires you to be exact, accurate, and pay attention to detail and follow instructions step by step. And on top of all that, it also improves your fine motor skills. Plus, exploring the dynamics of different paper airplane designs is not just fun and action-packed, but it also gets you familiar with engineering. Which brings me to one more set of activities: creative hands-on things like arts and crafts, painting, or even playing musical instruments. I primarily added those for the fine motor skills that come with it. I've said it before, but for younger kids, the biggest obstacle to coding is their ability to use mouse and keyboard fast and with precision. Playing an instrument or drawing is just another way to strengthen this universally useful ability. Of course, any activity can be made educational and help your child become smarter in general. To really learn coding, there's no way of getting around to actually sitting in front of a screen on a computer using mouse and keyboard. If you have a child who has an inclination toward computers and is tech savvy, have you ever thought about teaching them how to make their own video games, websites, or apps? Since there's almost no way of getting your kids completely away from screens, you might as well set them up with something that's productive and where they learn something rather than to just mindlessly play video games. I have an online course for kids at cc4k.co that shows them how to write real code and that teaches kids the same programming languages that big tech companies use. On there, you'll find interactive coding lessons from me, a virtual coding tutor for your child. I call it Videoversity, and it motivates and rewards kids to progress through the curriculum by giving them diamonds as a reward, which they can later trade in for cash or gift cards. Check it out for free today at cc4k.co. Of course, like this video and share it with someone who it might be interesting for. At the end of the day, we all benefit if our kids are smarter and more educated. Who knows what kind of major problems your child will tackle once they're an adult. Don't let your kids fall behind in a world of quantum computers and artificial intelligence. You want to unlock their full potential and set them up for success. Teach your kids the skill set of software developers and the mindset of tech entrepreneurs so that they can become successful expert coders. Join Videoversity today at cc4k.co and I will see you over there.